Islamic extremism is a real problem in the UK. Not a myth, not far-right paranoia, a real problem. One that MI5, counter-terror police, former extremists, liberal Muslims, and even foreign governments have warned about repeatedly. Let's break it down. The UK has suffered Islamist terror attacks for years. The Manchester Arena, Westminster, London Bridge, Parsons Green, Fishmongers Hall, Reading, Liverpool. Innocent people murdered in the name of an extremist ideology that openly rejects liberal democracy, freedom of speech, equality, and, frankly, modern society itself. Yet every time someone tries to discuss it honestly, the conversation immediately gets shut down with "not all Muslims. You're being divisive. You hate Muslims. You're always bashing Muslims. Islamophobia." Yes, we know. Most Muslims are not terrorists. Most Muslims are not extremists. Most Muslims just want to live peacefully. I lived in the Gulf for 13 years. I worked alongside Muslims, I lived amongst Muslims, and built friendships with Muslims. Many of the Arab people I met were some of the warmest, most hospitable, open, and generous people I have met in my life. Which is precisely why I refuse to pretend Islamist extremism does not exist. Because extremism harms ordinary Muslims too. It damages communities. It silences reformers. It intimidates ex-Muslims. It fuels division and suspicion. And it hands ammunition to actual anti-Muslim bigots. You do not protect Muslims by pretending extremists are not a problem. You protect Muslims by confronting the extremists. And as for the people claiming I'm always bashing Muslims, perhaps ask yourselves why this topic keeps coming up in Britain. I'm not sitting here making videos every other month about Buddhist terror attacks, or Sikh suicide bombings, or Christian extremists blowing up concert arenas, or Hindu extremist networks carrying out repeated terror attacks in Britain, or Jewish extremist cells carrying out mass casualty attacks here. People discuss the problems that are actually affecting society in real time. This is not picking on Muslims. That is acknowledging reality. Now, some people immediately jump in with, but there are more far-right extremist incidents. This is where people deliberately blur the lines between extremism, prevent referrals, and actual terrorism. Yes, far-right extremism absolutely exists. And yes, it should absolutely be confronted aggressively. The murder of Joe Cox, the Finsbury Park mosque attack, neo-Nazi groups, white supremacist networks, all of it should be dealt with firmly. But the fact far-right extremism exists does not somehow make Islamist terrorism acceptable, normal, or unavoidable. The comparison itself misses the point entirely. We should not have any threat of Islamist terrorism in this country. None. People should not be getting blown up at concerts. People should not be getting stabbed on bridges or in the middle of the street. People should not need police protection over cartoons, books, or opinions. Teachers should not be afraid to discuss religion. Women should not be intimidated. Ex-Muslims should not fear for their safety. This should not even be remotely tolerated in a modern democratic society. And some of you seriously need to wake up. Because every single time this topic comes up, there are people who seem more desperate to protect feelings than confront reality. According to the UK government's 2023 contest counter-terror strategy, Islamist terrorism accounted for 67% of attacks since 2018. Around 3/4 of MI5's counter-terrorism caseload. around 64% of those in custody for terrorism-related offences. Extreme right-wing terrorism accounted for around 22% of attacks and roughly a quarter of MI5's caseload. So no, I didn't forget the far right. I named it and I condemn it. But acknowledging one threat does not require pretending another threat is imaginary. And before anyone starts emotionally combusting in the comments, criticism of Islamism is not criticism of all Muslims. Islam is a religion. Islamism is a political extremist ideology. Those are not the same thing. The overwhelming majority of Muslims are not extremists, but many people increasingly feel there is not enough visible, consistent opposition to extremists from within Muslim communities either. That perception matters whether people like the sound of it or not. And people are allowed to ask questions when extremists are hijacking a religion, threatening critics, intimidating reformers, and carrying out attacks in its name. Even the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, a Muslim country, reportedly restricted scholarship sponsorships for students wanting to study in the UK over concerns about exposure to Islamist extremism and Muslim Brotherhood-linked ideology on British campuses. Think about how insane that is. A Muslim country warning about radicalization in Britain. And here's another uncomfortable fact. The Muslim Brotherhood is banned or designated as a terror or extremist organization in countries including Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Bahrain. Yet the Brotherhood itself is not proscribed in the UK, despite the UK government's own 2015 review concluding that aspects of its ideology and activities were contrary to British values and linked to extremism. Countries in the Middle East who actually understand the movement firsthand often take a harder line on it than Britain does. Now here's the part people really don't want to discuss. No other religion in Britain currently produces the same scale of organized terrorist threats requiring this level of ongoing counter-terror focus. Not Buddhists, not Hindus, not Sikhs, not Jews, not Christians. That is not bigotry. That is observable reality based on terror investigations, attacks, arrests, and MI5 threat assessments over the past 2 decades. And some of you just need to stop confusing criticism of an extremist ideology with hatred of people. If someone criticizes Christian extremism, nobody says they hate Christians. If someone criticizes Hindu extremism, nobody says they hate Hindus. If someone criticizes Jewish extremism, nobody says they hate Jews. But the second Islamist extremism is discussed, parts of society react as though merely acknowledging reality is somehow the real crime. The fact that teachers, journalists, writers, comedians, and ordinary people often feel nervous discussing Islamist extremism compared to other ideologies should concern everyone. A liberal democratic society cannot function properly if people are too frightened to speak honestly about extremist ideologies out of fear of accusations, intimidation, or threats. That is not tolerance. That is self-censorship. Britain has somehow reached the point where many politicians, institutions, and activists seem more afraid of being called Islamophobic than confronting actual Islamist extremism. You can respect Muslims while opposing Islamism. You can support immigration while rejecting extremist ideology. You can defend religious freedom while refusing to tolerate movements that fundamentally reject the freedoms of liberal, democratic societies. These are not contradictory ideas. They are common sense. Britain cannot solve a problem it refuses to honestly confront. Ignoring Islamist extremism does not create tolerance. It creates fear, resentment, mistrust, and division. And the only people protected by silence are the extremists themselves.